Good morning, everybody. I am Katie Phillips. I am the founder of the School of Self-Love. I'm a transformational and intuitive coach, and it is my absolute honor to bring you My Menopause, the interview series. We are on day 5. I don't know where the week's gone. I was just saying to Hen, who I'm just about to introduce you to, Henrietta Norton, just how much I'm loving this series. It's giving me so much energy. I'm genuinely feeling excited about my menopause. And it was only about 6 or 8 weeks ago when I really wasn't feeling very excited about it. And I really thought that this was the end. I was getting old. It's all downhill from here. I'm going to lose my sex drive. I'm going to lose my youth and vitality. You know, I genuinely thought, that's it. Life as I know it is over. And boy, has that just been totally flipped. And I'm genuinely excited about this life transition. And I'm excited to talk more about it, to talk unapologetically about it. Every single woman is going to go through this. And the one thing actually I'm really learning is, and this just comes back to basic coaching and basic mindset training and, you know, mental mastery. We get to choose how we experience our life. We genuinely do. And since I made the decision about 2 months ago that I was going to make my menopause a positive, empowering experience, already just with that mindset change, so many of my physical symptoms have disappeared. It's unbelievable. And then I've made a few nutritional shifts, and already I don't have my hot flush night sweats anymore. They have gone. Now, I don't know, maybe they'll come back. We'll see. Maybe I need some more shifts as I go. And that's what I'm learning through this process is you have to create a plan of support for yourself that is unique to you. And you have to remain conscious and in connection with your body and yourself and keep shifting and changing it and supporting yourself as your body is shifting and changing throughout the menopausal process. So anyway, I'm learning loads. And today I've got 3 just off the scale amazing experts to speak to, and we're kicking off with the gorgeous Henrietta Norton, who's the founder of Wild Nutrition. Hi, Hen.
Oh, hi, Katie.
Hi, so good to have you.
Oh, it's so lovely to be here, and I'm just listening to you now thinking I am so excited to be part of this because everything that you've just described is exactly why we need to. I mean, we were having a bit of a chat beforehand, weren't we, saying that actually awareness of around the menopause and seeing it as a kind of natural life transition, we need to elevate that kind of conversation and that message that goes with the menopause because, you know, it's really seen as a kind of medical condition, a kind of disease state, as opposed to something that's very natural.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm delighted to be part of this.
And I'm delighted to have you. I'm going to kick off by reading your bio, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
A little part of your bio, because your bio really, you've been so humble. You sent me this little bio, and I know that your bio actually spans like several pages. Anywho, to keep it simple, Henrietta Norton is an experienced nutritional therapist in women's nutrition and has done that for 13 years. She has 13 years clinical experience and 11 years researching and developing natural health products. She's co-founder of award-winning food-grown supplement brand Wild Nutrition, AFMCP graduate from the Institute of Functional Medicine, health writer, and author of 2 books, Take Control of Your Endometriosis and Your Pregnancy Nutrition Guide. She's also nutrition director at Wild Clinics, a space for women to navigate the complexities of their health with highly trained, soulful practitioners. She's also a dear friend of mine, and I'm so glad to have you here. Really, I think this is going to be a really exciting conversation, and can't wait to get your perspective on this. Woohoo!
Literally buzzing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too. Okay, so can you just tell the audience a little bit more? You sort of started earlier, a little bit more about what does menopause mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 2 aspects to this. So there's obviously the kind of me with my professional kind of hat on, and it's something that's very close to my heart because of the way that I practice. Every single woman that comes into the clinic, I have a deeper connection with. I mean, and I want to support wherever they are in their female journey. to be as kind of gentle and powerful transition as possible. And I feel I've seen too many women coming into the clinic who are experiencing menopause as a negative experience, and who are experiencing there are very real symptoms that come with the menopause, but quite often some of them will come having already been to a medical practitioner of some sort and being diagnosed with the menopause through a blood test, and then left wanting, given two options to either go on medication or not. And really, a lot of the work that I do with those women is also around educating what this life stage is actually really all about on a kind of physiological, biochemical level, but also on a more kind of esoteric, spiritual, emotional level as well. And, so there's that kind of professional hat on. And also personally, I feel that a lot of the life stages that are in a woman's life, natural transitions, so whether that's starting the menarche, so starting menstruation, going into fertility, going through pregnancy, going through the postpartum stage, in many other cultures, these periods of a woman's life are treasured, they're cherished and ceremonially kind of recognized. And it's only really in our Western cultures that we have defined them as more with a medical model, really, and as something that we need to be fearful of, actually. And so I feel on a personal level that we lose out on a huge amount of these. With these natural transitions comes an opportunity for growth. And I don't think that we give women the awareness or the space to kind of really indulge in that enough. So the menopause to me is, it is a very real thing that has a very, very real effects on women's lives. Some women find that they have so many hot flushes that it changes the way that they can work, how they sleep. It has very real biochemical symptoms. But it's also a huge opportunity for growth and development. And interestingly, there was a study that was done on the sort of more vasomotor symptoms. So those are the ones that are kind of the hot flushes and the night sweats. And interestingly, there was a higher propensity for women to experience those if they had a negative mindset around the menopause and were frightened of the menopause and resistant to the menopausal stage in their life, which is exactly as you were just saying earlier, that now having come to a point of almost acceptance and, wow, what is this space going to bring for me? Your symptoms reduce. So I think that's a really interesting thing. And from a kind of physiological sort of, again, biochemical standpoint, you can see that when there is any resistance in the body, whether that's psychological resistance or any tension in the body, then you put more strain on your stress management system. And that has a direct influence on your experience of night sweats, because we know that it's linked to the adrenal system. So I think that's really interesting. And actually in more traditional cultures, these women are known as the kind of, this is the wise woman model. These are intuitives. These are women that have gone through a rite of passage that actually become critical to their community. They're the ones that know when to sow the seeds, when to harvest, where the water is, how to heal. They become this kind of, sacred person in their community. And I think we all have the capacity for that. We all have the capacity to be able to deepen our relationship with our intuitive self. So, yeah.
I love that. I love every single thing you just said. And I love this idea around how different cultures handle it differently. I mean, even like, forget menopause for a second, go back to having a period. Yeah. I mean, in our society, we carry on, that word resistance is really powerful. We resist our natural cycles. It's like, I've got my period, I feel awful, I've got cramps, I'm feeling a little low energy, but we carry on with our work schedule our lives as if nothing's happening, rather than giving in, surrendering to what's so natural. We do it with pregnancy. I'll never forget when I was pregnant, trying to carry on as normal, until a very dear, wise friend sat me down and said, Katie, you are to be so honored and worshipped right now, because you are growing a life inside of your body. Why on earth are you carrying on with life as normal? You have 9 months where there is nothing normal about your life right now, as in a wonderful way. Why don't you just stop and enjoy it? Why are you pushing? I was like, oh my God. And then I had the most wonderful pregnancy because of that mindset shift. Like, this is amazing.
Well, I'm going to paraphrase horrendously, but there's a beautiful poem called God Be With the Mother. I don't know if you've read it or heard of it, but it talks about the essence of what it's bringing, which I think is such a beautiful message, is that when we give birth to another, we also give birth to another part of ourselves. And I think that happens with every life stage as well. You know, I think that, there's Donna Eden, which I know I've spoken to you about in the past, who does this fantastic book, Energy Medicine for Women. And then there's another book called Wild Power, which is absolutely beautiful. And it talks about this kind of ebb and flow. We're circadian by nature. So we have a natural propensity. We flow with rhythm and we flow with the cycles, and that can be reduced down to the menstrual cycle. So in the first stage of the menstrual cycle, ordinarily we might be more buoyant with energy, and we might be more creative in that stage, and particularly around the stage of ovulation. It's a very creative stage in a woman's life, in a woman's menstrual cycle. And then in that sort of luteal phase, that second stage of the post ovulation, is actually a time for what they call it the winter of our cycle. You know, it's that time for quietness and reflection and restoration, getting prepared for this enormously energetic part of when menstruation happens, when we start our menstrual bleeding. It's a very powerful thing. And I think that can be applied to our widened out to our life stages as well. And sometimes in these times of transition, where actually the fight is in not wanting to stop and not wanting to actually allow what needs to come through. I think we just want to charge on, and there's this intense fear of aging as well that we seem to have, kind of almost like propaganda for women. It's just, you know, aging is seen as this kind of highway to nothing, that we're reaching the end of our life, and it's absolutely not that. It's almost like a reduction or an aging of an aspect of yourself, and the growth and birth of a new aspect of yourself in many ways. So
beautifully said. Yeah, totally. Yes, there's so much here. Why are we so scared of getting old? Why is it? I was speaking with Jean Andres, one of the other experts, a couple of days ago, and she was just sharing how Disney has portrayed the menopausal woman. If you think of every Disney film, there's always a woman in it who becomes old, and then therefore she's an old kind of crone. Yes. Like an evil witch. And
that's really bad-tempered.
With really bad-tempered and really cynical and quite mean. And it's like, that's how we've kind of caricatured the older woman, rather than what other cultures are doing, quite bloody rightly, where they're celebrating and raising up these wise, wonderful women.
That really have had, you know, as I say, about kind of an aspect of themselves dying away. You kind of that sort of more how can you put it, that sort of more, I don't want to use the word superficial, because it's not superficial, but you know, the first half of our life really is very externally led. Actually, it can be very externally led. And that secondary stage is actually a sort of deepening from within. And you know, I think that's I think what we do in a kind of, I'm going to start going on to a kind of sociological, sociocultural, economic rant now. But you know, the thing with capitalism is that we put so much emphasis on, you know, acquiring and how we look and how much we've got, and actually perhaps less focus on the more intangible aspects of our being, which is And in some other cultures, it's the flip, it's the other way around. And it's in those cultures where that kind of celebration of the deeply spiritual, intuitive parts of a woman's life is still kind of really honoured. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I also love, again, back to resistance, and it was another expert, and I can't remember who said it, but just the idea that we have in our Western world, we tend to fight with our bodies. We don't allow our bodies to do what they're naturally meant to do. We're always pushing back, and we're making our body wrong for its very natural cycles. Again, back to pregnancy, back to having a period, and with menopause, it's like, no, thank you. I don't want that. I don't want it. And what we resist persists. We make it worse. We make our symptoms worse.
Yeah.
And I really love what you're saying about, and I really agree with this, and this has been a real theme over the week through all the interviews, is this idea that menopause is absolutely an opportunity for a woman once and for all to go within and stop looking externally, and to finally get conscious to her truth and who she is and what she's about and how she feels and what she needs, and learning to really finally put herself first.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that being okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will be messy. Invariably, that will be a messy process.
Yes, it will. And that's
part of it. It's totally part of it. What we're not saying here is that, it's all going to be very kind of tranquil and organic and wonderful. It's going to be messy, but that's actually part of it. And I think that's the other thing, is culturally, we don't really like that messiness. We don't really like, we have, because we are putting a lot of focus on the doing aspect of ourselves, that actually means that a lot of people are operating from a place of kind of sympathetic drive. So more, what do I want to say? So more fear-based, actually, if I'm being really honest. I think fear of, I did a talk actually earlier on in the week on stress, and I was talking about what the theme that underlines all stress. So stress is so subjective, but what underlines most of it is something that's novel, unpredictable, a threat to our ego. So it's something that's nuts. And I think the threat to the ego one is a really, really interesting thing, because we are constantly exposed to threats to our ego if we allow that.
Yeah.
In this world that we live in, there are constant threats, snotty emails, or the way that somebody else looks in the same dress that you're wearing, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Huge, and worryingly more so for the as much for the younger generation now as that. So that means that we operate from this kind of place of fear, and when we're in a place of fear, then we want to control more, and so we don't want the mess. We want to be able to decide, actually, I need to know that I'm going to bleed on day 28 because I've got to travel the next day.
I've got stuff to do.
Yeah. I kind of got stuff to do, and I can't have the cramps, so I'm going to pop some pills to remove those. And we don't listen to the opportunity for sometimes our body's way of saying, down, please look after me a bit better, slow down, something's out of balance, whether or not that's emotional or psychological or physiological. But there is this kind of desperate need for control in our life, and so sometimes we just need to let go of control and just be a bit messy for a bit.
Totally. Wow. Yeah, there's no coincidence that I choose a word every year that's sort of like my intention for the year, and my word this year is surrender. And it's a great word. Word.
But a great word, difficult to do.
Oh, totally. Oh my God, so challenging. The universe is literally going, oh, you want to surrender? Try surrendering to this.
Yeah, I'm going to throw you more stuff. Exactly.
Yeah, here's a bit of perimenopause. What?
And actually, I think that's the thing too. I mean, I know we're going to go on and talk about all these things, but I think actually the menopause itself, so the kind of cessation of menstruation, in many ways is the easy part. That's you've kind of crossed over the bridge. It's this perimenopausal stage that creates so much discomfort for so many that, I think, and that can happen half the time. People don't know what's going on with them. They might think it's PMS, or they might think it's, but actually the perimenopause can go on for kind of 5 to 8 years prior to the menopause. And, it's an intense time in a woman's life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's actually happening in our bodies. Let's look at, you're the hormone specialist. So let's look at hormones and what hormones are doing to us through perimenopause on all levels. So physical, but also emotionally, spiritually,
Yeah.
mentally. What
Yeah.
about what
Well,
role?
so there's actually a lot of ebb and flow with the hormones during that perimenopausal stage. So it's a kind of ebb and flow between drops in estradiol, something called luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone, which are related to the body's production of something called estradiol, a form of estrogen called estradiol, which is the estrogen that is produced primarily through the ovaries that basically allow us to be reproductive. And progesterone, which actually holds, in loosely speaking, holds a pregnancy as well. So throughout the menopause, you're kind of ebbing and flowing with these hormones, and slowly, as you reach more towards the menopausal stage, you have a kind of a significant reduction in, or a cessation of estradiol and luteinizing hormone, and that's determined by, or should be determined by, 2 blood tests. A month apart. But we tend to, in the UK, we tend to define where we are in our cycle through blood work, blood analysis work, rather than necessarily how the person is feeling. And because there's so much fluctuation during that perimenopausal stage, you might go in to the doctors to have a blood test one day and your hormones might seem in range, but then go through to the doctors, a month later, and they might be all over the shop. So it's actually it's quite a difficult one to determine through blood work. The perimenopause stage is a very difficult one to determine through blood work. And I'm more inclined to go with how the woman is feeling in herself, and then you will also tend to see changes in that menstrual cycle. So that might be a really long cycle, so a cycle being from the first day of your menstrual period right to the first day of your next menstrual period. That's determined as your cycle. So that might be longer, for example. I really like. I also get a lot of questions about menstrual flow as well. So whether it's become more kind of scatty or light, and also things like blood clotting. So what we know about the menopause is that it's a whole system response. It's not just an endocrinological.
That's a horrible word.
Wow, never struggled pronouncing that one. So it's not just that, it's actually everything. And because estrogen in its own right has lots of different properties that support the health of the body and the balance of the body in its own right. So for example, it supports the moderation of inflammation in the body. And in fact, some of the kind of less favorable types of estrogen, like 16-hydroxyestradiol, which is related to the development of more kind of estrogen-dependent cancers and things like that. We know that if there's a high amount of that, then it can actually fuel inflammation. So it can affect your experience, your immune tolerance as well, inflammatory conditions. So whether you've got psoriasis or endometriosis or rheumatoid arthritis. I mean, now the autoimmune kind of camp is massive. There are lots of conditions that fall under that camp. But that's why some women may find that in those kind of perimenopausal years, they might find that symptoms of certain conditions worsen, or they develop conditions like psoriasis or lupus or whatever it might be more readily. And then it can affect our cognitive function as well. So we have receptor sites for estrogen, types of estrogen in our brain as well. So it can affect, and that happens more as well through the menopause. Have you had anybody that's been speaking about kind of adrenal stress? And
yes, we have. We've had some of that, but go by all means if you want to cover it.
Well, I think one of the things that and this kind of feeds into what we've been saying about this, about sort of the Western approach to living, actually female living, is that you kind of push, burn, achieve, control, control. And then you hit this stage in your life, and what's happened is that over that time, you've got this incredibly intricate, complex, sophisticated, amazing stress management system in the body that is wired purely to ensure that we survive in a threatening environment. But it doesn't know the difference. We're still very primal in our wiring, so it doesn't know the difference between running away from an animal, the imminent danger, and a kind of snotty email, or or a traffic jam, or not getting enough kind of time out in your life. It doesn't really understand that. And what it does is, when it produces the stress hormones to respond to those stressors, it borrows kind of building blocks from other hormones like DHEA, which helps to produce testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, and these, and also the thyroid hormone. So when you go through the perimenopausal stages, actually the fluctuation, the hormonal fluctuations that occur during that time are also seen as as something that the body is trying to correct. And so it can perpetuate that release of stress hormones that it produces, which means that there's less kind of building blocks to make the hormones that the body requires, the sex hormones that the body requires.
Right.
So and certainly what I find, and what the literature shows us, is that those women that have more or a higher degree of something called adrenal fatigue or adrenal exhaustion, it's called lots of different things actually in different countries, but that they have a higher propensity to experience the menopausal symptoms that we associate with kind of negative symptoms like night sweats or hot flushes or blood sugar irregularities.
Right. So interesting. What about how do the hormones affect us emotionally and mentally?
Yeah. So, I mean, Is
that a big conversation?
It is. It's a really massive conversation, because actually, if you look at the literature, if you look at the scientific research or medical research, actually you would see that there would be no difference there is no direct correlation between how we emotionally feel and the level of our hormones necessarily.
Really? That's amazing.
In terms of estrogen and progesterone. What we do know about with the stress hormones, then we can you can see there is direct evidence between how that makes you feel kind of cognitively, and in terms of anxiety and production of things like GABA, so anti-anxiety neurotransmitters, production of serotonin. But it's not but what we do, but from kind of, if you look more at the research and the work that's been done by, say, psychologists, the world of psychology, there's a very direct link, and I think it's like we were saying earlier about allowing those kind of that flow to come. Sometimes a kind of reduction in, say, estrogen in that second phase of our cycle can actually encourage. So progesterone is the more sort of nourishing, nurturing hormone. It's kind of known as the more nourishing, nurturing hormone. Yeah. And so naturally we want to go to a more kind of nourishing, nurturing aspect of ourselves. And the estrogen hormone is more kind of, I guess, more dynamic actually. So yeah, I think as the hormones kind of fluctuate, we might kind of dip into different elements of ourselves as those happen.
Interesting. So what are you doing? Well, I know that you work with herbs a lot to support women. So what can we talk about that? What herbs are supporting absolutely. Support hormonal changes? Sure.
I think the reason why in a lot of the formulations that I put together for Wild Nutrition, I will almost always, if it's a multi-nutrient, for example, for a woman, or the botanical menopause complex or the PMS complex that we've got, I will put in a type of herb called an adaptogenic herb, because of the sort of rhythmic circadian nature of hormones, and because they do ebb and flow. They can't be necessarily determined day by day. So, as I said, some days you may have a rise in one hormone and a lower amount of another hormone. actually what adaptogenic herbs do is they work as a sort of tonic. I mean, there's a beautiful, beautiful herb that I love called ashwagandha.
Oh, I like that one too.
Oh, it's so wonderful. It's called a rasayana herb. And these adaptogenic herbs are called adaptogenic herbs because they literally allow your body to respond appropriately or adapt appropriately to their environment. And to stress within the body, whether that's physiological, so whether or not that's a fluctuation in hormones, or whether or not that is a physical biochemical, whether or not it's physiological, or whether or not it's psychological or emotional, that might be that the stressor is coming from. And it helps your body to adapt appropriately to that. So they work really beautifully in women who are going through those cyclical changes, whether that's in their menstrual cycle or whether that's a life stage fluctuation. And there's a particular type of ashwagandha that I really like that's been very well researched actually in its organic form called KSM 66. And it's been shown to reduce the amount of cortisol that the body produces. So if the body is producing too much cortisol or too little cortisol, it helps to regulate that. So cortisol being one of the dominant kind of stress hormones, and too much and too little is both of those are problematic. So it helps to regulate that. It's also been shown to help normalize thyroid hormones. I touched on the fact that actually when we go through the menopause and when we're under high amounts of stress, that actually it can change our body's production of certain thyroid hormones as well. So it helps to regulate that aspect. We also know that it's got immunological functions or characteristics as well. It helps to modulate inflammation in the body, which again, as I was saying, that can be a contributory factor in the menopause as well. And also, I mean, two other things which I think are really important is that it's shown to support the body's production of testosterone as well for sexual function as well. And that's in male and female. But I think, that's another really interesting aspect. I don't know if you've spoken to anybody about that in itself, but there can be some very physical changes that happen to the vaginal wall, for example, during the perimenopausal stage and the menopausal stages of life, which can change your relationship with sex. But actually, again, we can deepen that relationship. As we deepen our relationship or that intimacy with ourselves, so too can we manifest that with our partner as well, and sex becomes a very different thing. But the things that can become a very much deeper experience. But I digress. It's
an important conversation, though, and we have had
a really important conversation.
We have, but I want to talk more about it. I feel like I need a whole nother series on just that, just sex.
Yes,
it's great. It's an amazing opportunity for more intimacy, for sure.
Yeah,
it deepens. Sex becomes something different in a good way.
Totally. You bring a different part of yourself to it, and that can, But what ashwagandha has been shown to do is actually also help to support the body's production of testosterone that can also influence libido and our sex drive. And also support. There was a study that was done with it, with the ashwagandha on those women that are experiencing weight resistance as well. And it was on those women that experienced weight resistance because there was a very emotional connection to their eating. And what the study showed was that actually ashwagandha, because it helps to calm the nervous system and the adrenal stress response, actually what it does is by default is that then actually reduces the propensity to eat emotionally, to solve for emotional reasons. And so that has a direct effect on weight as well, which I found really interesting. So I absolutely love ashwagandha as a kind of whole system tonic. And then there are also the herb that I really, really like, particularly during the menopause, and I like during for premenstrual support as well, is something called dong quai, which is it's not phytoestrogenic in its character, but it's a beautiful Chinese herb that again works very systemically. It's in traditional Chinese medicine, it's known as a kind of blood nourisher, and so really, this stage in a woman's life can be very energy consuming, and unless we kind of quieten to to create that space of calm for it to for the energy to be conserved. It can in traditional Chinese medicine, kind of stagnant blood or in blood insufficiency can be from exhaustion, for example. So Dong Quai is a really kind of rounded. It's like, I see it as a kind of a real sort of godmother hug for a woman. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And what I really like about it as well is that, unlike other herbs like Agnus castus, for example, Agnus castus is a fantastic herb, but it works primarily on improving progesterone release. Now, you don't know where you are in your perimenopausal journey. You don't know whether you need support with estrogen or progesterone or testosterone or luteinizing hormone. You don't know where you are. And I think what Dong Quai is brilliant at doing is working with your body. So it helps your body to kind of regulate what it needs to regulate. So I love it as a herb, and it's got fantastic response in women in the perimenopausal stages.
Dong Quai and ashwagandha both sound to me like very intelligent herbs.
Yes, and they're very female herbs as well, actually. So there's, there are some herbalists who kind of see male herbs and female herbs, and it's a very sort of, it's a very feminine herb. But I think, also this concept, I think that that feminine means sort of gentle and sort of slightly kind of ineffective.
I know, it's super powerful. Actually, very powerful.
Incredibly, that power that comes with gentleness and calm.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly rooted strength. And that's the other thing, is these things are roots. And I really believe this in nutrition as well, is that, the food that we eat that's got a deeper reaching root is actually more nutrient dense as well, and can be very, very grounding for the body. And the same for herbs as well. So if you're working with the root, it can be incredibly grounding.
Amazing. And I might be remembering incorrectly, so this is why I'm asking the question. I was taking ashwagandha powder in a powder form for a while, and I was under the care of an Ayurvedic doctor, and it was amazing. It was like I was raving to everybody, saying that's my new drug of choice. I had so much more energy. I just felt clearer. I felt more positive. It was great. And then it just waned off. It was like I had this peak for about 2 weeks of just like amazing. And then it waned off, and I kept taking it, but then he had me stop taking it for a while, because something about we shouldn't be on it all the time. What's that?
I mean, I think there hasn't been any kind of proven contraindication with taking it over a long period of time. But actually, I think with anything, with supplements, with herbs, with anything, what you are doing, surely the primary reason of taking them in the first place is to support your body's return to balance, support your body's return to health. And you don't want to become reliant on these things. And so actually I believe in actually taking breaks. So I think people can stay on adaptogens for a prolonged period of time, but I would suggest that you take, say, a month off in between those cycles. So you might do 3 months and then a month off, and then 3 months and a month off, or you can titrate the dose, so you can change the dose. But I would agree, I think you don't want to, adaptogens are incredibly safe, so they're not kind of going to be able to override the body's mechanisms, but I think our body's incredibly clever, so let's just leave it to do its thing for a bit, and then as and when our body tells us that we need to take it again.
Yeah, interesting. Can we self-prescribe herbs, or is that dangerous?
No is the answer. I mean, there are a group of herbs that are safer than others, and adaptogens are one of those. And actually, I think the majority of people can do really well on those, and so they're not an issue to take them on your own, off your own back. But the herbalists are incredibly clever, and so I would always recommend, if you want to take a specific herbal remedy, that you go and see there's a brilliant company called Herb's Hands Healing, who you can call up and you can get advice, and they can help to make up a tonic for you. But you need to see.
Write that down. I have to write that down. Herb's Hands Healing. I mean, you at Wild Nutrition, you have specific supplements to support a woman through menopause.
Yes.
What do you have?
So we've got the Botanical Menopause Complex, which is a beautiful combination, actually, that is primarily Dong Quai, but we've got milk thistle in there as well. We've got a bit of green tea in there. We've got alfalfa in there, and some magnesium as well. So magnesium is, I'm sure that some magnesium's come up during this week, because it literally is the wonder mineral for all women, all people. Yes, so that's a really beautiful combination, because it looks at the woman's body as a system. So it looks at all the elements that might be affected by hormonal fluctuations. And again, as I say, it's more of an adaptogenic approach, as opposed to a kind of going in and increasing progesterone, and it works with your body. And then we've got an ashwagandha as well. We've got the KSM 66 ashwagandha, actually, that I was talking about. That's been, it's got the great clinicals with it. That's also got magnesium in it as well. So again, a very good nerve tonic. And then we've got a daily multi-nutrient that's either for those that are under 45 or those that are above 45. So depending on where you are in your life, that those are great sort of all-round support for nutrient shortages. And actually, I was looking at some research recently, and that said that taking a multi-nutrient, a good quality multi-nutrient, can actually not only reduce your experience of fatigue, for obvious reasons, because you've got the nutrients in there that will support your body's production of energy, but also that it reduces your perception of stress, which I think is really incredible. And I was trying to sort of work out why that would be. And yes, you can see how it would reduce the kind of the biochemical physiological stress in the body. But I think that actually engaging in and investing in your health by taking something means that you feel more present in your own health, and actually more in control of your own health as well. And I think, stress is quite often characterized by a sense of being out of control as well. And I think if you are doing something that makes you feel that you are nurturing yourself, you've got a sense of control back in your life. I think there's a huge kind of almost placebo effect.
Yeah, I really agree with that, really. But it's about intention, isn't it? You're choosing, and choice, you're choosing to care for yourself. So yes, absolutely. Just that mindset shift.
Yes.
It's going to shift things physiologically and emotionally. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. But in terms of, and in terms of somebody buying your products, is it safe for them? It still feels like self-prescribing in a way. I mean, do they still need to talk to somebody and say, because I know I'm taking some of your products, and then I think, I might want to take some around to support my menopause, and I definitely want magnesium in my life. I'm not taking it at the moment. I must do that. But do I combine that with the iron and the whatever else I'm taking? I feel like I should get advice, right?
Yeah, I think it can be really empowering to get advice, and get advice that's specific for you, because what's going to be right for you isn't going to be right or what you read in a magazine isn't necessarily going to be the right thing for you. So, I think it can be really helpful and empowering to get that advice. What I really love about the food grown aspect of our nutrients, so but I'll just explain that our nutrients are grown in food. So they come out in a more natural structure, which means that the body is able to retain and absorb them really well, and you don't need to use these kind of crazy high doses. And actually the studies that have been done on this food growing process have also shown that there's less contraindication between vitamins and minerals. Because if you take a high dose of a synthetic isolate form of one mineral, say iron, for example, it can actually interfere with your body's ability to use things like calcium, or high amounts of calcium, and interfere with your body's ability to absorb magnesium. And what we know from the food growing process is that doesn't happen. It doesn't occur, and you don't need to use these incredibly high doses anyway. So in terms of safety, it's not a concern, but I do very much believe that you know, we need to respect the intelligence of the body, and it doesn't make any sense. I believe in doing things simply, and it doesn't make any sense to flood it with lots of different things. So in that respect, it's actually really helpful to see somebody and get that advice. I mean, at Wild Nutrition, we have a nutrition line where people can call and ask advice. I mean, we're limited by what we can say because we don't know you very, very well.
Sure.
And so it may be that kind of a consultation is better, but certainly we can kind of give more top. We've got some really experienced girls on the line, so they can help.
And you've got wild clinics as well, so you can actually go in and meet with a nutritionist. And
exactly. Yeah. And you know, and I think, as you said in the introduction, you know, our approach at Wild Clinics is very holistic. It's very 360. So we can do all the functional testing. We can do, you know, adrenal profiles or hormone profiles or neuroendocrine profiles, but we're also looking at the woman as a whole, and every single woman that comes into the clinic is completely individual. So there may be a booking of 7 women in one day that are going through the menopause, but every single one is going to be seen differently. You know, it's not applying the same kind of model to each woman. And I think, again, another really, and I hope that this is the case, that I feel very strongly about empowering the woman to listen to her body. So it's about education, but it's about helping them to understand and empower them to listen and trust their own body and trust this process. There are things that we can do to make that journey as comfortable through herbs, through nutrition. They make profound differences, but also it's about kind of creating a space where a woman feels held as well and supported. And not medically diseased.
A medical problem. Yeah,
exactly.
Fixed.
Yeah.
Supporters. Yeah.
And you know, I think we do live in a world, and actually nutrition and food has sort of played into this as well, which I think is not necessarily a positive thing, is that we've been indoctrinated to listen to people outside of ourselves rather than listen to our body, and trust other people, trust the other gurus of the expert. They can be really helpful, and you know, this series that you're doing is incredible. We also need to combine that education with listening to yourself. And you know, just because somebody puts up an amazing avocado breakfast on Instagram doesn't mean that that's going to be the right one for you. It's what your body needs. Listen to your body.
Yes, that's really good advice and so true. And just to take the herb conversation another step, what's the benefit to going to a herbalist rather than taking a herb supplements?
Yeah, so what a herbalist can do is they are registered to use different sorts of herbs. They can be there can be a more tailored prescription for you. I mean, all the herbal combinations that we have been informed through herbalists. So, you know, it's my work along with the kind of amazing advice and support of, I consult with some incredible herbalists. So, you know, but what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to put together a formulation that could be excellent for one person and absolutely detrimental to another person. So it may be that, you know, like a herbalist can be more specific for you potentially. Some people will need that, you know, some people will need that more prescriptive formulation as opposed to a rounded tonic. And that can be really helpful. We get incredible feedback from our botanical menopause complex. We get hilarious feedback from our botanical menopause complex. Somebody saying, "So you've changed my life with this product. It's incredible, and now I don't shout it. Build it." I can't remember what she said. Workers who are laying tarmac on the road anymore. You know, it's I love that. I sleep and I don't sweat as much, and so a lot of people fare very, very well with that. But if you need something more specific, then herbalists can be really supportive.
Got it. Brilliant. Now we do have a question over in the Q&A box. 1 second. The amazing Jean, who has just been on every single interview so far and asked a question every time. Love it.
Hi, Jean.
Yeah, she's like milking this. It's brilliant. I can't seem to balance my emotions to make a lifestyle change. Any suggestions how I can? I'm 18 months post-menopause and still suffer symptoms. I suffered terribly with adrenal tiredness in perimenopause and gave up full-time work as I couldn't cope. Part of me wants to go back to work and get my periods back. I can't really accept the change. Anything I can do?
So, yes. I mean, I would suggest that something like ashwagandha would be, I think you would fare really well on, you may fare really well on ashwagandha, because it is that sort of whole system support. And if you were experiencing the sort of adrenal fatigue association with the perimenopause, then actually what your body requires, so postmenopausally, your adrenals become one of your primary sources of estrogen production, actually, of a different type of estrogen that has effects on the immune system and on the brain as well. So we have receptor sites in the brain that help us to kind of, it supports our mood and our cognitive function, and also our brain development. So actually that would be a really nice support for you there. There's a lot that I don't know what's happening. I guess what am I understanding, that because she's not, Jean, you're not feeling in a kind of a sound place, that actually you're finding it hard to adopt some of these more positive changes that you can do through diet and lifestyle. Is that the case?
She really was saying I can't accept the change.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and Jean, with my coaching cap on, I would say it starts with a choice, and the acceptance will come. It's like allowing, like being available, being willing to accept, and it's almost like a daily prayer. Like if you don't accept today, that's okay, but it's choosing that my intention is to accept where I'm at. My intention is to accept, and every day I'm getting better at it, and allow yourself, surrender into it, and allow yourself to get better day by day in surrendering into the acceptance. I don't think acceptance can happen overnight.
I think you need to
all the time.
You need to be in a place where you feel safe, don't you? And to know for the knowledge as the kind of, and I think that's what happens. That's an amazing thing with community of women is giving women that sense of feeling you are safe to let go. Beautiful poem that you put up about letting go. You are safe to let go, and you can trust the process. And so, there are lots of things that have happened in our life that can influence our feeling of safety or trust. But I would say, like you say, working on those aspects will really help that acceptance to come organically as well.
And maybe even a bit of talking therapy, or a bit of coaching, just to actually have some conversations about what you're going through. I think once you can start speaking to somebody who completely loves and accepts you for where you're at, that can normalize everything for you as well. I get the sense that you're feeling damaged in some way, there's something wrong with you, and it's just not true. And I feel like as soon as we start speaking about it with somebody that we can trust, maybe someone that's been there, done that, got the t-shirt,
and this part of ourselves that we drop into postmenopausally is incredibly powerful, and that can be quite threatening as well. Our own power can be quite threatening, can't it?
Absolutely. That's such a good point. Yeah. I hope that's helpful, Jean. She hasn't said anything else. Maybe she's dropped off the call, but she'll listen to the recording. If you're on Facebook, by the way, and you've got questions, we're not actually going to answer Facebook questions just now, but you can, and even if you're listening to the recording, you can put questions in, and if Hen has time, and you're a very busy lady, I know, just even pinning you down to this interview was fun. But I'm sure she'll jump in to the Facebook feed and answer it. And hold on, I think we've got one more question. I think no. Let me just click done to that one. Hold on one sec. Oh yes, no, we do. Jean has said, this is helpful. I think coaching and some herbs are needed for me. Yeah, that's it. It's a bit of exactly. It's not ever going to be one thing as a solution, right? It's multi-pronged approach.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's a very holistic approach. It's very, very powerful when it happens like that.
Absolutely. Definitely. Hen, I've loved this conversation. Is there anything else you feel like you would like to, just a message you'd like to leave with the audience before we wrap up?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think I mean, yes, there's lots of, I hope that the messages have been, no, I don't think, I hope that,
we're done.
Yeah, I'm out of here. I just hope that the messages have been weaved in, you know, about trust, and, you know, this has the opportunity to be something really powerful, and to bring a huge amount of collective wisdom it back into the world. We have this opportunity as women to do that, and to celebrate it as a rite of passage, like we should be celebrating the start of menstruation and everything that we were talking about, and use it as an opportunity to come back in and listen to your body. You are amazing. Our bodies are incredible. Our being is incredible. But actually, Katie, the most important thing that I probably would want to leave with is to say thank you to you, because I think you have done an amazing thing this week. And I know we were talking earlier about trying to distinguish between what we're kind of putting our feelers out for, and whether, because both of us have seen a kind of a greater, we want to increase this awareness around the menopause as a positive experience. And I'm seeing more women with menopause. And I don't know whether all that's the universe attracts that, I don't know, but, you know, the message around positively experiencing the menopause really needs to be amplified, and you've done an amazing job in facilitating that this week. And I think the work that you do is incredible. So
thank you. That means a lot. And I intend to keep spreading this message, and I don't know how, but yeah, there'll be more. And just to mention as well, you do have a Wild Nutrition are running a campaign right now. You can buy Menopause Complex and Multi 45 and get magnesium for free.
Get the magnesium, yes, as complimentary. I mean, that is a really powerful trio, actually. I mean, really works on all the systems that we were talking about as being affected during this time. So, yeah, so that's something that we're running, I think, until the end of the month. So anybody who listens to this can dive straight into that.
Great.
And as I say, we've got this nutrition line, so if anybody needs to understand anything more, they can just give us a call and we can help them on the phone as well.
Yeah, I find dealing with you guys just amazing. The customer service is amazing. Really good.
Thank you. Really I mean, it was so important when we started out, not just to produce, you know, incredible products, but actually to support the education side as well. It's all about this kind of empowerment for people to understand their own bodies. And yeah, so I'm glad that that's coming across.
I will share the link to that offer underneath everywhere that this video goes, and but otherwise people can just go to Wild Nutrition, right, to find that offer at the moment this month in May.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Brilliant. You're a star. I love you dearly. Thank you so much for taking part.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me. And
you're welcome. You're welcome. And viewers, we've got 2 more interviews today, and then the series is over. So jump on. I think if you join live, you get to ask questions, and it's super valuable. I will see you later today. Love you lots. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.